Hi, I'm Doug Doherty with Hamilton Flourishing, and I'm glad you've joined us today. We have an exciting program. As you know, Hamilton Flourishing loves to talk about education, and we love to talk about alternatives to traditional education. And so we've spent a lot of time over the years talking about homeschools and charter schools and different kinds of schools. And so, as well as talking about how we can hold our own big system accountable and more transparent. So we've done a lot of that sort of thing. And but today I'm really excited because in this studio with me is Angela Markum. And Angie is with Ivy Charter School. It's up in the Soddy Daisy area. And it is a school where they do integrate outdoor learning into every subject. So if you have, well, it wouldn't have to be just this, but so the children aren't sitting at desk all day being lectured. They're out being involved in a moving world, and but the school is doing great. And Angie's here, she's going to tell us a little bit about that. But the more exciting is they're starting an elementary school in 2022, the Fred Skillern Elementary School, or Ivy Skillern Elementary School. And it'll be opening up in 2 campuses. They just got their charter recently, and they'll be opening up in 2022. So Angie Markum is here. Angie is a native Chattanoogan, Hamilton Countyan. And we're so glad you're here. I just think so much of what you do and just appreciate it so much. I have my daughter taught up there for a while and just relishes the memory.
Well, thank you for having me here today, Doug.
Tell us what makes a charter school a charter school.
Well, a charter school happens when a group in the community says, we think that we have a really good plan to educate the students of our community, and we think that we can do it as well as the offerings that are there now, public school offerings that are there now.
Yeah.
So it's a very arduous process as far as writing the charter. You write the charter, which has many, many sections, many requirements. For example, by the time all our supporting documents were in the charter that we just wrote, it was over 700 pages long.
700 pages?
Yes, sir.
Sound like lawyers.
Yes, it is quite a task, and you have to have your educational plan, your business plan, your human resources plan, your facilities plans, your emergency plans, everything to find out very, very well. And then you take that, and you can only turn it in the state of Tennessee one time a year. They have one window of opportunity where you can turn it in. Prior to turning in the application, you actually have to turn in a letter of intent to give the district ample warning, advance notice, so they can go ahead and solicit consultants to actually analyze and review the charter. So you turn in your letter of intent, you have the charter application written, which is probably a document that's had a couple of years' work put into it. You turn it in, they review it for a couple of months, they come back and they may have questions, you go through formal interviews, and then it's presented to the board.
To the school board?
To the school board, the local school board.
The local school board.
Once it's presented to the local board, the review team at the district has the option to recommend it to the district, or to recommend the board to not vote for the charter application. So we went through the cycle, all the process, and the review team did recommend for our charter to be approved.
Yeah.
And so in April, at the April 15th meeting, the Hamilton County Board of Education unanimously approved the charter for this school.
That is so exciting. Now,
yes, it's very exciting to us.
Because I think there's several charter schools in Chattanooga. I think one of the things I like about charter schools is that they can fail, and they can go out of business. So if they don't do a good job,
it's very true.
Very true. And so
stakes are high.
There's a level of accountability there that we don't have with other. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they made an interesting point that you can tell how well a school system is doing by how many people they fire every year. And there was something to that. If you never fired anybody, then nobody's doing and the poor performers are not being weeded out. So
You have
Anyway,
to perform or go home.
But now Ivy started as a middle school, high school. When?
We started actually as a high school in 2009 with just a ninth grade.
Okay.
Then we built one grade level at a time till we got to be a full high school.
Okay.
And then we affectionately call the high school only model in Hamilton County the suicide model, because you can't survive, the school can't survive just being as a high school, because for the sole reason that students don't generally change schools at the end of 8th grade. There's 2 schools in Hamilton County that end at 8th grade, but they're magnet schools, and they have decided to, they go on to the magnet school they're kind of paired with. Mm-hmm. And then the other students, they just matriculate straight into whatever the high school is that matches their middle school.
Now, one important point I do want to bring up, these schools are public schools in the sense that you, one, get your funding through the state government, I guess, and it flows through through the county, and they get that. And then 2, you all have to take pretty much everybody, don't you?
Yes, we get to take everybody.
Yeah.
Anyone who applies, once we get over our number that we can, that we're allowed in our charter for our enrollment, then we have to run a lottery.
Okay.
So what I was getting at is that the public school students, that's our same pool, and there's just not a pool of 9th graders waiting, looking for some place to go different than their middle school. They'll go to Soddy Daisy Middle, Soddy Daisy High, Ooltewah Middle, Ooltewah High. So there wasn't a constant feeder. That's when we decided, hey, we need to have a middle school, because everyone does at the end of their elementary school years. They're looking, where do I want to attend middle school and high school?
Yeah.
So we expanded to middle school in 2015-16.
Yeah.
So we amended the charter, expanded then, and through that process we grew, and it did remedy not having a constant feeder. So now we had that feeder, but the problem, and it's a good problem to have, is that the siblings, the younger siblings of our students, the parents wanted a really similar model for them.
Now, what's distinctive about Ivy? Tell me what's distinctive about Ivy. The one that's up now. What makes it so different?
For our 6 through 12 school, what makes us really different is that we integrate the outdoors into every subject. We strive to have at least 50% of our instruction time outdoors. There are a couple of things that prohibit that. One can be weather, and another can be some of the high school courses are so intense with the amount of standards that must be covered. For example, in chemistry or algebra 2, you really do have to spend a good amount of time paper pencil in the classroom with some of those. You really do. But the applications we can do outdoors make what you do with paper and pencil make a lot more sense.
Wow.
So the application of what they're learning outdoors is what makes us different. That we're active, the students are active, and the activity and the outdoors with the engagement piece, the student buy-in, that's how we're different.
Yeah, I when I talk about you, and you don't know that I talk about you a lot, but I do, I say, there are people who are educational entrepreneurs, and you're one of those, I think. And they're people who have ideas about how you educate children, and they're different from, they may be a lot better, but they're not what's in the mainstream. And so, but they need a chance to grow. Every person is unique, and they learn differently, and so there should be multiple ways of approaching things, and there should be multiple options available for people, and so I refer to you as an educational entrepreneur, and so
Thank you. You have to look at, our culture has changed drastically. And if you look at a day in the life of the American child, it has really changed. Over the past 20 years, it's even changed. So used to, where students would go home and then they would spend the day playing outdoors, or they would spend some time doing chores. sadly, now students go home and a lot of their time is spent on the screen. Now, not all students, but a lot of it is. And that activity and that outdoor, the sunshine, the fresh air, they're not really getting it that much at home. And they're certainly not getting it in the standard model of education at school.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, we're seeing health needs arise, such as attention deficits, such as a lack of vitamin D. So this model really meets a need in our society right now, and students begin to thrive. The positive testimonies of parents who are just singing our praises and will do anything they can to help our school because their student has met with success. Whereas before, when it was a more sedentary setting, the student just couldn't make that work for them. They needed more activity.
Is there a certain type of young person that makes just the perfect student for Ivy?
We can make a perfect student out of anyone. Is that true? I would say no. It's not one particular category, but I would say it is beneficial for everyone.
Okay. The reason I ask is one of our children, we have 6, and we had a tester with her, and he was a kinesthetic learner. And he would have loved the kind of thing you're doing. And but now something I need to tell people is that because it's a public school, there's not a tuition for this school.
Correct.
Right? You apply, you get in, and the children will be outdoors. You're getting a good education. We were talking a little bit about your results so far, and they sound really good. High placement rate in both secondary education or certification or some other thing that they can step into. And I imagine you have a lot of kids with a lot of self-confidence that graduate from that school, I would think.
Yes, we have had many parents remark to us that it was a game changer for their students' self-confidence and esteem. And it's a very accepting culture. Like any place else, you'll have an incident of bullying, but we're on top of it, and we don't just, it's not just a punitive thing. If someone bullies, then they get coaching support on both ends, the bullied and the bully. And we see students just begin to thrive. I'm thinking of one particular family, and their student had been in private school, and when he came, he would hardly make eye contact. But by the time he left, he was so full of confidence, and now he is in a career doing very, very well.
Oh, great.
And so it's a blessing to see when they follow back up and you get to see those kids.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now tell me, you all have now taken this step to take the original school, which is a older high school.
6 through 12.
6 through 12. And you're going to put an elementary school up in the same area, not on the same campus, but in the same area. And tell us about that. Why did that come about?
Well, as the younger siblings, families who had younger siblings were constantly calling saying, we want this model. Our older students are having such success with this. We really want it for our younger kids. And after 2 to 3 years of hearing that over and over and over, we said we've got to do this. It's community demand. They want it. So we began to write the charter. The first year it did not come to fruition. We had a few things, so we turned it in, but they said, no, we want a little bit more definition in some areas. And so we worked on it another year. We put some survey out in the community, and with just a number of days after that survey had been out, over 800 families responded and said, we want this model for our elementary age students.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
In the northern part of the county?
No, all over the county.
Oh, all over the county.
Yeah, we are district-wide. So students and families really, really want this model. And
I'm so excited for you.
we are too. One of the questions that was asked in the review is, what will you do if you don't get enough enrollment the first year? Because your budget is based on how many students you
Right.
have. And I'm like, I really don't think that will be an issue. My hardest part of this is going to be saying, no, I'm going to do that again because I pounded the microphone. My hardest part to this is going to be saying, you're on a waiting list that may be 100 students long. You know, that's hard because families are desperate for other options.
Yeah.
It's, you know, public educators are doing their very best.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sincere people. Most are sincere people doing their best, very professional, but the models that are being implemented are old.
Now there is something different about this school, and tell us about the
academic model.
The academic model.
Okay. Well, when we looked at this, what should we do for an elementary school? Well, we knew that the outdoor piece was just the magic sauce to get kids engaged, to get them applying learning, but we knew we had to have an academic model that complemented that. So when you look at brain development, human brain development, and how children begin to learn, you know, you look at very young children, say a toddler, the first thing they do when they learn to speak, they begin to label, and they try things, then they label them, and they begin forming their vocabulary. And then beyond that, once they get the vocabulary, they start to categorize groups in the vocabulary, and then they start to catalog those things in their brain. Well, that happens too in older children, and you have to work with that. You have to work with how the child human brain develops. So the classical model of education really does that well. So since we had the outdoor piece, which we know is the physical, the healthy, the engagement piece, we wanted to couple that with the most excellent results that we could, so we chose the classical model to go with that. So we're calling this the Tennessee classical model, in that we implement the classical model outdoors because Tennessee has this big, wonderful resource of beautiful outdoors that a lot of people take for granted, and there's so much to learn. We can learn so much from nature and just being outdoors and seeing it. It's great for students. So we have the Tennessee classical model that we're going to use for the elementary school.
Well, great. Well, Angie, it's been great talking to you, and we've had your slide up on the screen for how people can get in touch with to the school. They can get in touch with you. They can find out more about what's going on up there. Are you taking applications yet?
The application window will open September of this year.
September of this year. But your school doesn't open until 2022.
Yes.
Okay.
If they'll go to the website on the slide, it'll give them all that information.
Okay. Well, listen, we're going to talk now. We're going to change gears. We're going to shift gears. And we're going to talk about classical education model. And so stay with us. We'll be right back. We're back, and we want to talk more about Ivy Skillern Elementary. And you heard I was talking before to Angie, and Angie was telling us about how you get to be a charter school and about the outdoors. And she mentioned the word classical education. So we're going to continue our conversation now with Laura Golden. And Laura has been working as a consultant for this as classical curriculum and instruction with Ivy. And Laura, I've known Laura for a long time. She's a graduate of Hillsdale College, which I know a lot of you are very impressed with. The school, they do lots of neat things. They send out their monthly thing in Primus, however you say it. And so Larry Arn runs the school. They do all kinds of neat things. But she learned up there about the whole classical system, and she taught in Phoenix at a classical school for, I think, 6 years, native of Chattanooga, and she's back here now, and we're so glad she is, and that she's teamed up with Angie. And so, Laura, what is a classical model of education? Tell me just kind of what, how, I never heard that word before. What do I need to think about?
Well, to understand it, I would start with, because it can be a very complex answer,
Yeah.
start with what the purpose of a classical education is.
Okay.
Something unique about a classical education is that it's constantly communicated to the learner that what they're learning is connected to a higher goal, a higher purpose. And that purpose, to be very classical and use Greek, is something called arete. And arete is human excellence or virtue.
Okay.
So, all right, what does that mean? To be very classical again and quote an ancient, Aristotle said that happiness is the activity of the soul in conformance with virtue. And he meant by that moral and intellectual virtue. And so our moral imagination and our intellect are our faculties. And so the purpose of a classical education is to say, what is it that makes you human? And it's largely these two faculties. How can we cultivate those faculties so that you can live a fully human life?
Yeah.
You have to start there, because if you get the wrong goal, then you've lost it from the beginning.
That's great. That's so exciting. I love the idea of I was telling Angie that, you know, I really think of her as an educational entrepreneur, and I think there's so many people out there that, given the opportunity, they can just, if given that if our system was not like it was, they could do all kinds of things with education for all kinds of children and young people and adults too. But you know, this is such a great model, and it goes back to antiquity, and so much of Western civilization is based on Greek thought that it's really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So when is this elementary school going to start?
It's going to open in the fall of 2022.
2022.
Mm-hmm.
And so would that be K? Will you start with K?
It starts with kinder, and also there's going to be a one K1 classroom.
One K1 classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And will this all be on one campus?
Two campuses.
Two campuses.
Mm-hmm. One in Saudi Daisy and one on satellite campus on Booker T, Washington State Park.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Will this still have all the outdoor stuff going on?
It does. It has the outdoor component, which fits beautifully with classical.
Why is that?
Well, it fits very well with the idea that we are giving to students a feast of goodness.
Yes.
Part of the way that the goal of classical is achieved is that we furnish the mind of the student with riches and skills. And so the classical part, when we're furnishing with the riches,
Yeah.
it means that it's a content-rich curriculum,
Yeah.
which means the underlying belief there is it actually matters what you learn, not just how to learn. And there's been a loss of that in a lot of education. It doesn't really matter what you learn, just so long as you have the skills of learning. Well, skills of learning are important, but it also matters what you learn, because we are inheritors of something. And when we take on and we are able to imbibe that common heritage through this rich curriculum, we have a sense of community and belonging. We also, what it produces in the child when they are studying the best things, which is what you get when you look at all of the inheritance and you say, no, we're just going to pick the best. Those things which most clearly model the good, the true, and the beautiful. Two very important things happen.
I want to go. Can I come?
It's amazing. So what we do in the mind of the child is something that, if we do it right, continues to happen for the rest of their lives. So when they encounter all of this richness, this feast, they develop a sense of wonder and awe. And two, they're given, they're furnished the models of goodness, truth, and beauty that they can imitate for the rest of their lives. So a good example of this would be a student who is studying planetary science, and they're being taught by a teacher who's passionate about it and who knows what they're talking about. They are going to have a sense of awe at the vastness and the beauty of the universe, and that produces delight in them. Delight, well, who cares about that? Delight is actually one of the essential components of living a fully flourishing human life. You can live a better life when you know how to delight in things. And we might think, oh, well, that just comes naturally. It doesn't. You have to learn how to
cultivate.
You have to cultivate it.
Yes.
The other thing is virtue.
Yes.
So when they're presented with models of virtue, of courage,
Yes.
when they read about Hercules, or they read or hear a story, or when they are learning history and they read about George Washington, they learn to love and admire those characters, and they want to be that themselves, because what we love
I'm so
will
excited
become
about this.
who we are.
I'm so excited about it. We're too old to have children, but if I did, I'd send them to you guys.
Well, the amazing thing is that it works with the outdoor, because when we bring in the outdoor element that Skillern has, we are now introducing them in a hands-on way to ownership, dominion, and delight in the outdoors. They're going to have a poetic relationship to nature, and it's just going to lead them on to what will hopefully be lives of stewardship, not only of the earth, but of their communities.
Now, if I'm watching this video and I'm listening to you talk, I might say, well, I wonder if that school is for my child. Is there? How would you answer that? If someone comes and says, well, I'm not sure that's for my child. How would you kind of answer? How would you kind of answer that question? I mean, is there some child that this is better for, or not? Is there children who? Well, is there a child that this is better for? Is it good for all children?
It's good for all children.
Okay.
Because the things that we're talking about, and the reason I started by talking about the purpose of education, is that these are fundamentally human things. We all have a moral imagination. We all have an intellect. And the whole idea here is we're teaching the whole human person. Not just a specific type of person. We're teaching the human person who has a body, who has a mind, who has a heart. And we don't view any child as, well, we want them to grow up and just get a job. That's all we see them as. They're just a cog in the economic machine. No, they've got a soul. And they have these faculties, which we know that they have. We, among all creatures, have these faculties. So they have to be cultivated.
So what does this look like in 5 years? What is the school? How do you kind of describe what your day would be like in an ideal world in 5 or 6 years with all these children?
Well, what I'd love to be doing is just sort of protecting this vision for the elementary school, helping teachers to realize it in their classrooms, working with them as we truly bring classical to life in this city, in a school that's open to anyone for the first time.
Wow. Now, Angie told me, you may not know about this, that you all are going to have a bus going down to someplace in the urban part of the city, I think she said, a bus route.
That's going to be more Angie's side of things, but my understanding is that the campus at Booker T. Washington is going to only go through K1, and then once they are in second, they'll then be bused over to the Saudi campus.
Yeah, but I probably should have clarified that. But anyway, we can get back to that later. Well, this is so wonderful. I'm so glad. I've known you for a long time. I'm so excited and to hear your passion and your knowledge. And you rarely hear anyone talk at this level about things like virtue and the whole human person and how it works, and the hopeful integration that we get there, but yet be able to talk about the specifics parts of a virtuous life and moral imagination. I mean, you just don't hear these things talked about. I mean, they ought to be talked about often, but they're not. So I'm so glad you're working with Angie, and you all are going to be a great team, and I'm so excited about the Ivy School in Elementary, and it's opening in 2022, right? Right. And I believe Angie told me that you all at full size will have about 400 students, more or less.
Again, that's more on.
Well, she told me about 400.
Then yes, I agree with that.
Well, we've been talking to Laura Golden, who is the helping with the classical curriculum side of this new school, this new charter school. And we get excited at Hamilton Flourishing about charter schools. We think they're great. We think people need to have choice, and we think there need to be a lot of options, and we think the marketplace is the place to prove yourself. One of the things I told Angie I like about charter schools is that they don't do a good job, they lose their charter. So unlike a public school, if they fail, they just stay open and keep failing. But so, man, more power to you guys. We hope you succeed and just beyond your wildest dreams. I think you're going to make a tremendous mark and be a tremendous, make tremendous contributions to the community and to the children of our community, and which means to our adult population, to the civic life, to the business life, to the arts, all that kind of stuff. So I'm so excited you're here and you're investing yourself in this, Laura.
Well, it's great talking to you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for watching this edition of Hamilton Flourishing. We hope that you'll go to the website that's up on the screen, and you'll be able to get in touch with the people at Ivy, and you can learn more about this exciting school. And it's going to be, well, gosh, it'll be K through 12. So if you've got kids and you're thinking, this is my place, you might want to call them up, because I'm sure they're going to have a waiting list. So we're excited for them, and we're excited that you watched us today on Hamilton Flourishing.